And I think we're live. Is that working? I guess it is.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to our Facebook takeover. That's live Q&A. Thanks, Ryan, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. I'm Tara Kremen, so I'm the author experience manager for Kobo Writing Life. This is my first live takeover, so please go easy on me in questions, comments. Yeah, oh, it's your first one too? Oh, awesome. So yeah, how about Ryan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So most authors probably know me best as the founder of BookSweeps. So BookSweeps is a company I started in 2016, which helps authors primarily helps them grow their email list and their online platforms. So for instance, helping authors grow their BookBub followers. We used to do Amazon followers. And other promotions that are aimed at helping authors achieve specific marketing goals like that. So primarily what we've been doing for the last 3.5 years is running multi-author giveaways and promotions aimed at very specific genres. So for example, we would get a group together of 30 or 40 authors in small town contemporary romance, and helping them leverage their audiences against against each other to help generate a larger influx of traffic to a specific landing page where readers can then sign up to sign up for their newsletters and hear more information about them and find out more about them in general. So we've done that now with over 4,000 authors since 2016, and we're excited to be launching the next version of the website in the next week or so. So that's going to be really awesome. It has a lot of new functionalities, which are going to, a lot of them will be free actually for authors to take advantage of. That'll help authors, expand their reach and make it even easier for readers to find them online.
Oh, nice. You must be very busy then launching a new website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Yeah. But it's
yeah.
Together finally.
So, sorry, what inspired you to create this? Like, what's sort of the bit of the background with yourself in the book industry? Like, why, had you always wanted to start your own business and you just saw a kind of gap in the market, or was it specific kind of like with your interest in books?
So I was always really interested in the book industry. Well, not in the book industry, but reading in general. I didn't actually realize there was an opportunity to work in publishing until after I graduated college. It just wasn't something that occurred to me. It was like I thought, people who worked in publishing were all dead or something. I don't know. It just didn't.
You're just like, books are those things that are made out of trees. That's it.
Exactly. It was like, oh, books just sort of happen. I don't know how, but they're just there. So it just wasn't something I really even thought about until after I graduated. It's like, oh wait, this is actually an opportunity. So I started interning in Manhattan with a lot of different publishing companies and literary agencies, including Weinstein Books, of fame for the wrong reasons. And the last place I ended up interning was a Writer's House, which was home to like Neil Gaiman and Nora Roberts and Stephen Hawking and some giant names in the industry like that, John Green. So I just kind of, I sort of found a path through ultimately to, that were sort of geared to my interests. I ended up sort of creating my own digital marketing internship while I was at Writer's House. Just sort of by asking like, hey, I was sort of more interested at that point in marketing stuff. I'd been doing some marketing work on the side, just sort of online. And they were like, they sort of just let me do it. Really great of them.
You're like, I've just created myself a job.
Yeah, pretty much. And so they were really, helpful in that regard. And then afterwards, they sort of, they started referring me clients pretty much, which helped me start my own company. And then so from there, just sort of, word of mouth and that sort of thing just sort of caught on. And the BookSweeps thing sort of started as an accident, actually. We were working with a group of romance authors. I was working with a group of romance authors, and they were just sort of interested in, me helping them trying to find a way to, pretty much, grow their audience on Facebook. And so I came up with the basic strategy that, forms the nucleus of what BookSweeps is now, which is the idea of, authors leveraging their audiences with each other to, create like a larger wave of traffic. So that was the idea. And that's sort of just, as we kept doing it and, continued to be successful, it sort of grew through word of mouth.
Nice. And I got the chance to see you speak at Indie Book Fest in Orlando last month or the month before. Yeah, and you did a really great talk about kind of like email marketing that I just think is really key to authors. So I have a few questions sort of like based on that. And so I just like, firstly, do you have tips for authors who are just like starting to build their mailing list? If you're building it from scratch, like what's your number one sort of tip to get started?
My number one tip to get started is definitely to actually get an email marketing platform. Like for example, like MailerLite or MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or something like that. And definitely what we see the worst sort of blooper, we see that some authors will do when they join a BookSweeps promotion is they'll tell us after that they don't have an email list and they were just planning on sort of, BCCing everybody that they got the promotion. And that's definitely, the first no. You don't want to do that. It's both illegal. I mean, it's against all spam laws because you have to actually have a way to easily unsubscribe from any email that you send people in that mass kind of fashion. But it's also just doesn't look professional. Obviously, it makes you look like you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's I'd say you really just have to be conscious of a lot of legality around emails because especially like with different regions, like there's all different rules. So yeah, I would avoid doing anything that could get you into trouble, right?
Yeah, definitely sign up for an actual email marketing tool service first. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a preferred one then? Like what's the main difference between like MailChimp and MailerLite? Because they seem very similar, on the surface.
Yeah. So a lot of it comes down to sort of nitty-gritty functionality things. So for example, with MailerLite, there are certain ways you can create automations. So an automation, for example, is a sequence of emails that goes out after somebody signs up for your email list. So let's say somebody signs up on, today on your email list to get some sort of free book incentive. So they sign up and on, if they're signing up through MailChimp, for example, let's say day one, they get that email with that free book. Day two, you might send a follow-up email that just says, hey, did you get my free book? And then day three, you might follow up on that. So there's no conditional logic, meaning that with MailChimp, there's no way to determine, for example, did they click a link in email one to see, so that you can know in advance, like so that, for instance, you wouldn't have to send email two if you already knew they clicked email one, right?
Right. So that doesn't, MailChimp doesn't actually tell you that.
Right. There's no way to create they tell you that, but they don't let you create automations that are reflective of that reality. Whereas with something with MailerLite, you can create conditional automations based off of specific actions taken within those emails. So it allows you to create a more personalized and more, an experience that's more reflective of what, the user actually expects.
Yeah, and it's probably good for kind of reducing any unsubscribes if you're not kind of emailing people the same thing or emailing people that you shouldn't really be emailing.
Right. But it's also like, imagine, for example, you're just talking to a friend and then like you keep repeating the same question. It's just like annoying, right? And it's sort of the same experience when you're emailing somebody. It's like, yeah, I already did this, Yeah. Why are you telling me about this again, right? It's sort of creates a similar experience.
Yeah. And do you think that there's a specific day or time of day that people should target these emails? Like if you were getting started, or is that kind of like a myth between like, Tuesdays are better?
I don't think that, there are studies about that, but I think they're all sort of biased in a way because they're all, whatever day you send your email is going to be the day that you have the highest clicks, right? So if people just happen to send all of their emails on Fridays, then that's going to be the day that gets the most clicks. So I'm not sure what those studies actually tell us. And I haven't personally found anything that supports that, personally.
Yeah. Okay. So there's not really, that's good to know that you can send them when you feel like sending them.
Yeah, I would sort of look at it on a case-by-case basis, try different days of the week and see what kind of works for you. I personally like to send emails on like Wednesdays and Fridays. I tend to avoid Mondays just because I don't think people want to get emails on Mondays. It's the first day of the week and people have other stuff to do. So that's just like a personal thing, but I don't know if there's any specific science to back that up. It's more of an intuition thing.
Okay. And what do you think about like changing the kind of different mailer lists that you have for the different genres of books that you're writing, or like if you have different pen names, like should authors be kind of conscious of that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Oh, sorry. About changing sort of having separate newsletters or email lists for different genres or for different authors' names. Like if they have different pen names, is that something that people should be conscious of, or is it okay to like hit the base with just like one giant base?
I mean, so I know authors who do it both ways. I think it depends on kind of how different the genres are, right? So if you're writing nonfiction under one pen name, and then sexy romantic, paranormal romance are under a different pen name.
It could be sexy nonfiction.
It could be sexy nonfiction too, but probably the audiences for those things are not the same. And so you kind of have to judge that yourself. If you're writing contemporary romance and historical romance, or historical romance and paranormal romance, maybe those audiences have overlap. And so in that case, maybe it makes sense. But if you're writing really different genres, then I would want to separate those because the likelihood of overlap is probably pretty slim.
Mm-hmm.
But even ideally, you would be asking people, do you want to get emails about this or that, to make it as specific as possible.
Yeah, and I've seen sort of like a bit of a trend where people have like an email that is kind of like their news and updates, and then there's like a separate email that's just for like, hey, do you only want to get like promotions?
Yeah,
so, yeah,
you could do things like that for sure.
Yeah, it seems like kind of like a good tool. So yeah, the people that just kind of want the extra bits can just like sign up to a specific list.
Yeah. I mean, like corporate companies have been doing that sort of thing for a while, but I think the technology is becoming more available to sort of individual people and authors and small business people to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think the authors are just getting so savvy now too.
Yeah, definitely.
So once you've sort of like started building up your list and you're getting a good list going, what do you think is an important thing to keep in mind when like crafting a good email?
Oh man.
So too general a question.
Where do we start? Yeah, I mean, start with the subject line, I guess, which is a tricky subject to cover. But
how do you feel about emojis in the subject line? Is that a yay or a nay?
Actually, I'm very supportive of emojis in the subject line. I think well, I'm supportive of them because not that many people are using them. And I think it's just sort of obvious from a personal experience that when you use an emoji in a subject line, it definitely stands out, especially, compare around everything else. When everything else is text and when yours has color, it's just going to stand out. I don't think there's any way of getting around that. So, yeah, I think, as more people use them, I think it'll become less effective. But at the moment, I think they're definitely helpful.
So what should your subject line cover? Because I know I think there was a while where we were, like even when we were sending out our own newsletters here, that it would just be like newsletter October.
Right.
And then we realized that was not engaging, like not making people open this. So, so should it be something that's fun? Should you be kind of like thinking more business side of it?
I tend to think about it in terms of like, what is the question that's left in the reader's mind after they read that initial. I think of it as like a teaser almost, and then you kind of I want there to be some sort of question in the reader's mind at the end of it. They're like, oh God, I need to know what happens next, right? It's almost like the subject line is a cliffhanger.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Actually, you're just like, it's a cliffhanger to make them open this email.
Open the email, right? And so. I don't know if you noticed this, but like when I'm looking at I actually get a lot of inspiration for subject lines by reading, headlines on like websites like Yahoo or Huffington Post or that kind of thing. Because really, headlines are pretty much longer subject lines, and so if you can kind of use the same sort of structure for a subject line. So a lot of times you'll see people, you'll see news headlines that are something like, you won't imagine what he did, right? Or like who's he? Like you don't know who he is, right? So you have to click the link to find out who he is, right? Mm-hmm. On top of, the rest of it, or like you won't like, or this is the thing that'll make you lose all the weight in 2019 or 2020, right? Like, so what's this, right? So like it creates this kind of momentum in your mind. Where like, oh, I got to know what this is, or I got to know who he is, right? And so then you have to click the link or open the email. And so those are sort of like these little psychological tricks you can use to kind of trigger people to like, it's like almost like you're starting a loop in people's minds, and then they feel compelled to conclude it.
Nice. I think that my favorite headlines, when you're thinking about that, they're always like pun based, that kind of like either make me chuckle or make me want to open this a little bit more to learn more about it. So it's a good way of thinking of it as a headline. But yeah, I guess what's the worst thing that you could do in a subject line that's like rather than like a generic thing? I'm trying to think of like the really awful clickbait ones that I hate seeing. So maybe it's something like that.
A lot of capital words, free with lots of exclamation marks around it.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to be like shouting at your email list, like, "Hey, I'm emailing you."
No, I mean, it should be, I mean, like you should, I mean, I even sometimes will just write the subject line without capitalization, or just the first letter capitalized, like you're writing it to like a friend or a coworker or something.
Mm-hmm.
It seems more personal.
Yeah.
I think that the term newsletter itself sometimes gets in people's minds and they start thinking about it in terms of like corporate, or a, really specifically structured kind of
Yeah.
content. I think it's helpful sometimes to think about it more flexibly, more just like as a letter.
Yeah, I guess we should just like be calling it an email. This is just like your email list.
It's just an email, right? Yeah.
So you mentioned kind of like the subject line kind of sets the tone. So do you notice that kind of any specific tones that do well for emails? Like I know that I like personally myself when authors are really kind of friendly and I kind of feel like I get to know them a little bit through it, versus sort of kind of something that looks like it's a very standardized form and it's just like informing me when things are happening.
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely go for humor.
Mm-hmm.
Humor is is one of the best, forms of persuasion in general. People are more, likely to listen to what you're saying, when they're smiling and laughing, generally. So definitely aim for humor. I mean, obviously you don't want to be weird about it, but
You don't want to like share like the dad jokes all the way.
you don't want to be really peculiar. But if you can be funny, try to be funny. I mean, but also I think like you should try to meld your email tone with, probably the branding that you're trying to achieve as an author, or through that pen name. So if humor isn't part of your branding, then you probably shouldn't try to be funny. But because again, I think it's important to think about it this way, but like, everything you do as an author is part of your branding, and especially everything that you write. So, I think sometimes when we talk to authors some sort of like mentalize their books from their newsletters in a sense of like, oh, well, this is my book, and so readers are going to judge me on this, or this is a newsletter, so whatever I write doesn't really matter. It's just sort of this add-on thing. But I think like that doesn't really acknowledge the actual experience of the reader, which is that for the reader, like these are all written documents that are being shared by this, sort of semi-distant, author figure, with you as the consuming reader, and I think from a reader's perspective, all that stuff kind of comes together as part of this like overall holistic experience, right? And I think the authors and moving forward who are going to have the most success with their newsletters are the ones who treat them the most seriously, and as treat them as like the most as an extension of what they're doing as an author, and as a writer's, like as a published author on whether it's self-published or traditionally published, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to kind of talk about the branding, like to take that into account in your newsletter, because essentially, or your email, I'm going to stop saying the word newsletter. But essentially, it's sort of like an extension of your author website. Like, so it would be, I think it's important for authors to keep in mind that with like easy things like color schemes and like different logos and things like that.
Yeah, just like make it easy for people to read what you're. Yeah, I mean, like accessibility issues, like think about it like, if you're a reader just coming to see it and you open your newsletter for the first time, it's like, oh, it has really tiny font. I mean, one of the first things you might think as a reader is like, well, why didn't this author take the time or effort to make this readable, right? Like, what does that say about you as an author if that's the experience you're having as a reader? It doesn't reflect well, even if it doesn't seem fair. I mean, it's not relevant. It's just, it still might have that effect on you, or their, it might have effect on their impression of you rather. So it's just something to think about when you're designing the email, how it, as you go through every aspect of composing and sending that email, from the subject line, even to like what time you send it. Like, why are you sending emails at 3 a.m, right?
Just a workaholic.
like even if you're awake at 3 a.m, why do you think I'm awake at 3 a.m? Like, I mean, think more about, right? So it's about thinking about the audience that you're writing to. And
yeah. And I'm sure that gets a little bit complicated when you try and factor into like different time zones and stuff, but.
Yeah, that's true. But a lot of email marketing systems nowadays have functionalities that let you actually send according to the time zone of your recipients.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so like ActiveCampaign that we use offers that. I think MailerLite offers that. I'm pretty sure actually MailChimp offers that on their paid plans too.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know, because it's like our team here is like spread out throughout the world as well, and I always feel guilty when it's after hours and I'm asking my colleagues in France for something, and I'm like, please, I hope you're not looking at this. But yeah, it's always good to be conscious of different time zones.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information that you can glean from emails being sent out through things like MailChimp and MailerLite. It's, sometimes there's like too much data. So what do you think is key to be tracking? Is it kind of like your click rates, your open rates?
Yeah, definitely looking at click and open rates. I also take a look at your deliverability rate. So that's the percentage of emails that are actually getting through, not going to spam. It's an important one to be looking at, because if that number isn't like above 98% or so, it probably means you have a lot of emails, or a certain number of emails that can probably be removed.
What causes an email to go into the spam filters?
I mean, there are a lot of things, starting with, how often, I mean, not starting with, but one of the factors is like includes how often people have, put your emails into spam in the past. So for instance, user behavior is definitely part of it, which adds to like a kind of a credit score that you don't really have access to, but it exists sort of out there in the interweb world. So the more people spam you, kind of the lower your email credit score goes, which will, kind of travels around with you.
Mm-hmm.
So another aspect of that is the sort of the deliverability ranking of the service that you're using. So that would be MailChimp or MailerLite, what have you. So those two ranking, those are probably the two most important factors. But then you also have how those two factors are being interpreted by the email client, like Google or Yahoo or Outlook or whatever. So it's, you have these two variables, and then you have how these email clients are interpreting them. So there's a lot of different stuff going on there, but generally speaking, that's pretty much the, why certain emails go into spam versus others. Does that answer the question?
So I guess, yeah, no, it does for sure. I'm just trying to think that, like, if you were seeing that your deliverability rate was low, I guess like a way of improving it would to just be kind of like checking out who you're emailing and like the frequency.
Well, I think what I would do in that case, their first thing would be to sort of like their services, like clearout.io is a service where you can validate your emails. So you can just upload your email list to a service like that, and they will kind of they'll like ping them all pretty much, and to figure out kind of what the response is. And so a service like that can help you remove like the dead emails sort of instantly, and any like fake emails or emails that are just sort of are most likely going to spam just by their very nature.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just remove those, that'll help your deliverability, and that'll help your overall deliverability moving forward as well.
Cool. So your deliverability percentage is sort of like a good thing to track. And then what other kind of stats should you be keeping an eye on?
So sort of along with that would be like your bounce rate. Do you have a lot of emails bouncing? And so if email is bouncing, it means it's not, it's not getting into the inbox, or for some reason it's the inbox isn't accepting it. So that's related, and that'd be another thing to look at. But then on top of that would be, obviously your click rate, your open rate, just in terms of general, health of your email list. But again, I think sometimes people get overly, they don't necessarily take into account the fact that their email list might not be as healthy as it could be, by which I mean like there might be a lot of dead weight on your email list. So that could sort of make your open and click rates seem lower than they actually are, just because you have a lot of people there who aren't actually people. So in that case, again, you would want to probably, put together some sort of campaign where you're sending emails to these people who aren't, you aren't opening your emails, and then, asking them, do they want to stay on your list?
Yeah, and how can you, one question, like, how can you like improve click rate? Is just the number of links that you have in the email, does that affect it, or does it have any effect at all, or it's just like the number that people are clicking on them?
I think generally the fewer links you have in your emails. I mean, if I'm an author sending an email, I'm not going to put a whole lot of links in my email. To start off, I'd put the most important link at the top of the email, because typically that's the link that's going to get the most clicks. Most people aren't going to be reading the entire length of your email just because they have other things to do. So again, it's important to be thinking about kind of what's the reader's mind frame. How many other emails is this reader potentially getting? How important am I realistically in the life of this reader? Are they really going to be reading everything I'm sending them in this email? So if you like take a moment back to reflect on that a little bit and kind of think that through, maybe you would send fewer links, or prioritize the way that you structure your links differently, so that the most important link should always be at the top. And probably again, it's sort of think about it this way: like each link is a call to action, and that in a very literal sense means you're telling people to do something. So if you're telling people to do 6 things, if you tell people someone to do one thing, they're more likely to do like that one thing than if you tell people to do 6 things, they might not do anything.
Yeah.
This sort of goes back to like overwhelming people with choices.
That's a fair point. Do you think that people respond better to clicking a link itself, or when like a photo is clickable, or does it really make a difference?
I think it does matter. It matters insofar as like if you put an image there, does the image have some sort of button element to it? Like, does it say click me, or does it say click here? Because otherwise people aren't just not going to necessarily know that the image is clickable.
Yeah, that's true. I guess they're just going to like see a picture and not realize.
Yeah. So I would always, if there's an image, there should be some button out, like there should be a button drawn on it almost, or created within the image. But typically I prefer buttons. Also because with images, you also have display issues sometimes. If for instance, if someone has a bad internet connection, or if their browser, their email client is like very active in terms of preventing images from getting through, they might not see anything. In which emails, like it's nothing. If it's an all email, then it's just pretty much nothing. So you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, and I know that in the services like this, like MailChimp and MailerLite and the others like Constant Contact, they always have sort of like a benchmark or industry standard. But I find it kind of difficult to gauge what, like, for an author, because it's such a specific thing. Do you have a general benchmark that you like to have as a rule for like click rates and open rates?
I mean, I really wish we had more data on this. It's actually something that I'm thinking of working on, getting more data on that. But I mean, from what we hear from authors, most authors seem like they're in the well, again, my data is probably skewed in some ways, but it's in the 35-40% area. I think, if you're an author and you're in the 40% area, that's very good.
And that's the open rate?
As an open rate, yeah. I think as a click rate, I think any author, if you're at like 10%, like that's pretty amazing. 5 to 10% is pretty good.
Okay.
It seems like most authors are probably at the 5-ish% range. I think if you can get like over, in the 8 to 10% range, or 6 to, a little bit higher than that, that'd be great. But it seems like most people have trouble getting above around 5, 6, 7%.
Okay, that's a good thing to know about the different benchmarks. So 35 to 40% is like the kind of excellent open rate to aim for, and 5 to 10 for the click rate.
I would say like 50% or better would be excellent.
Okay.
But like, if you get like 35, 40%, like you shouldn't be upset with that. I guess it's more like that would be like baseline not to be unhappy with, I guess.
Fair, that's fair enough. And how valuable do you think it is to have, like, because you talked about links being call to action, but like rewards to get people to sign up to your newsletter and things like that, like an extra feature that they can't get somewhere else, like a prequel of a book or a free book or something?
Right.
Do you think that's a good incentive to have, or is it kind of Like, is there a specific place that should be? Is it just when you're joining the email list, or should it be like every email, should they get something?
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I would try to train people to click on something, but I wouldn't make it so that they kind of, you don't want to have this like Pavlovian response where people constantly think they're getting something for free every time you send an email. Because if you finally want to send them something they have to pay for, then like, oh, this isn't free, sorry. All right, you don't want that potentially to happen, I guess, would be my concern. So I mean, I would try to train people, I think, to click on different things and kind of make it so that people are thinking about clicking regardless of whether it's a paid or not paid item. You want them to be clicking kind of because you're recommending it and they trust your recommendation. That's sort of the ideal situation.
Mm-hmm. Cool. No, that sounds good. Yeah. Do you have any other sort of advice that, or maybe something I haven't asked or forgot to cover, basing on like emailing lists and sending the emails out themselves, as this sort of subject matter expert?
Think of that. I could ask about.
I know that one is quite simple that sometimes people overlook is kind of like looking at the email that you have that you're sending out as well, your email address. I mean, I know that sometimes we get emails from authors and we're always kind of surprised that it's, ponies25 at Yahoo. It's not necessarily like Tara Kremen.
So, I mean, in terms of author email, I would say for authors, they should definitely have their own professional email address. That helps with deliverability. So that would be like, I hope I'm not giving away your email.
That's fine.
Like tara@tarakremen.com, for example.
Mm-hmm. That isn't my email. I actually have a really stupid email, so you'd never guess it. Yeah, no, it's embarrassing. It's really fun when I have to try and give it to somebody when I'm in a store. They're like, "Do you want to give me your email address?" I'm like, "Sure." Don't know if you want it though.
Yeah. So for example, like that Tara Kremen version of your email, like if that existed, would have a higher deliverability or have higher deliverability success than the tarakremen@gmail.com version.
Oh, interesting.
Because I mean, it's a little bit complicated, but basically, I mean, you're kind of you're demonstrating a kind of ownership, which demonstrates a kind of accountability and responsibility to the internet forces.
Yeah, it's probably good for trust with your readership base too.
Yeah. So it does help with that kind of thing. So that'd be one thing I would definitely recommend. A lot of times, like Google Suite, you can buy it for like $5 a month. A lot of times your web host will include a domain-based email like that for free. So I definitely recommend contacting your web domain if you don't have one and seeing if they provide one for you.
Cool. So I should go out there and get Tara@tarakremen.com. That's what you're saying. It's probably gone now.
Someone has already bought it, yeah. They're going to hold it out for you and try to upsell it to you.
Yeah, that'll be the website. Like, yeah, the website's already gone. I'm like, luckily, I don't feel like I have the need for one, so it's fine. But yeah, speaking of, I guess, so different websites and stuff. So can you talk a little bit about like an author platform and like the importance of building one up?
Yeah. So like in terms of, for example, why you would want to have, I guess I'm just trying to focus the question a bit. So like,
sure.
I guess like thinking of like in terms of like why you would want to have like both an email list and a BookBub following, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, a basic reason why you would want to grow both, for example, it was just like having multiple paths to discovery, kind of in a basic sense. Thinking about how as an author do I get discovered? So some readers might come to you through your email list, right? And then some readers might come to you through BookBub or through Facebook or through Twitter, or maybe not Twitter, but
maybe.
maybe, yeah. So I mean, the importance of having these different kind of outposts is that people, is understanding that people come to you through different channels and being able to broadcast to people from those different sort of online stations, even if you think, oh, maybe, well, why do I need a BookBub? Why do I need people to follow me on BookBub and Amazon and on my emails? Isn't it all the same thing? I mean, the short answer is no, it's not. because you have no way of knowing that there's any overlap. And even if there was overlap, it's better, if I tell you to do the laundry once, it's not as effective as I tell you to do it 3 or 4 or 5 times, right? That's why parents nag their children. The psychological principle behind having multiple emails going out from Amazon BookBub and your email list about your new release is not that different from why your parents nag you to do the laundry 7 times.
I feel like you've got some resentment there from.
Right, just the more times you tell someone to do something, the more likely they are to do it. That's just how things work. So that's sort of the basic. That's basically why you'd want to grow, your multiple sort of avenues.
Back now? Can you hear me?
Something happened there.
Oh, sorry about that. Our Wi-Fi.
No worries.
All right. But what I was going to say about your saying building up a following on different avenues, it's kind of like the same thing that we tell authors about when people ask us about going wide versus just publishing on one place. It's kind of the same principle as like you want to put yourself in front of as many people as possible and like let them read in any means that they want to read. So it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Letting people, giving people, the opportunity to, follow you in their own way. Exactly. It's a kind of freedom of its own.
Yeah. And given the difference in kind of like the different books that there are, like, do you think there's a different means of like, because we're very focused on audio now at Kobo because it's just like such a big trend, and like ebooks is growing consistently, but audiobooks is kind of like skyrocketing in the growth. Do you think that there's a difference in marketing like an audiobook versus like a print book or an ebook, or is it all kind of the same principle as you're marketing the book itself?
There are definitely differences. We don't do a lot of audiobook marketing to this point, but just in terms of, we've done a little bit, and just in terms of thinking about it, there's a difference in terms of the audience, obviously, because of the way it's being consumed in a different medium. So you need to be selling it to people who are using different tools, potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you need, like, most likely your audience is going to be more affluent, probably, because they would have a car, for example, or they would have some access to, a device that lets them stream audio, which has some cost to it.
Yeah.
It's an iPod or a computer or whatever it is. It's not cheap. So probably, you're dealing with a more well-to-do audience in general.
Okay, that's good to keep in mind, yeah, because I think we've even found that as well, that our readership is not the same. The people that read the Kobo ebooks are not necessarily the same people that listen to Kobo audiobooks.
Yeah, like before, like even an Audible subscription, like it's $15 a month or whatever. It's not cheap, and unless you're, there's Chirp is out there now.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, it was pretty. It's not a super affordable hobby unless you're making a certain amount of money, I think.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So can you tell us about BookSweeps 3.0? You talked about that you're launching this website this week or next week?
Soon, yes, very soon.
Soon, okay. I won't like let you have a specific date, but so what are the newest features? If you can talk about them a little bit. If not, we can just wrap.
Yeah, so I could talk about it sort of in a general sense.
Cool.
Kind of the vision behind it is to make it easier for authors in general to gain, or for readers and authors, for authors to share their newsletter-oriented freebies and promotions that are helping them grow their audiences in different ways. So making it easier for authors to share and distribute those, and then making it easier for readers to find and participate in those is a large part of what the new site is about, to speak kind of in a general sense. So there are going to be more opportunities in general for, we're making it easier for reader discovery and of authors, and in turn for authors to find new readers through sort of these new technology technological systems we put together to help with that.
Nice. I feel like anything that helps discoverability is always kind of key. There's so many books now. It's not enough time to read everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially what we're creating here is a way for make it a lot easier for readers to find things according to, specific criteria that they might be interested in.
Right. And do you have any other projects that you're working on, or is it just like the focus has been very much on this update?
There are other projects in the works, but this is the big one. As it'll become clear when we launch it, it's quite large in scale.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And what about you personally? Like, do you write yourself at all, or is it just that you discovered the publishing industry and were happy to stay there?
I did. I used to write in college a bit, and then I found that it made me sad.
Why did it make you sad?
Oh, I just like them. I don't know. Like it just did. I got too drawn into it, and then I had to. It just didn't work for me. I don't know. So
you should do a nonfiction book and share some of your email marketing tips.
Yeah, that might be how I go about it. Because fiction was hard. How about you? Do you write anything?
No, I tried to do NaNoWriMo last year. We do one in the office that we call Kobo Writing Life. And there was like 30 people and 5 people finished. And I got to like 25,000 words of sheer gibberish. And then, life got in the way and I couldn't continue. So maybe this year will be my year.
I wish you well with that. It's hard.
Yeah, it's so hard. It really gave me a good understanding. It was a great exercise of being more empathetic towards authors and the struggle. Yeah. Well, we have a comment there from Kelly Coates Gilbert that says she's looking forward to connecting at NINC next week. And she's just asking if you were going to, that's Novelists Inc., which is a conference in Florida. You'll be attending?
I will be there.
Yeah, thanks. So anyone that's there can go and kind of grab you.
Yes. Hopefully not too hard though.
Yeah, it's gentle grabbing by the beach. So where can people find you if they have any sort of additional questions or information that they want from you?
So my personal website is ryanz.com. And then if you're interested in finding out more about BookSweeps, that's BookSweeps.com. And the landing page for authors is BookSweeps.com/authors.
Cool.
So I can send you a link to that after.
Sure. Yeah, we'll link for sure in. I think it might be on our blog post, but anyways. But yeah, let's see if we have any other questions. Stephanie asks, paperback book or ebook, and why? I'm not too sure I understand the context of the question, but ebook, obviously, because that's what I enjoy reading the most. But Ryan, what do you like?
Reading wise, it depends. I think I prefer paperbacks for nonfiction. I think, and ebooks for fiction.
Fair enough. It's all like about preference, but I like that there's the choice between both. I've been listening to a lot more audiobooks as I became such a fan of podcasts, and then it kind of leans into using or listening to audiobooks. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I've been listening to, but try to get to before I go to bed. It helps.
have somebody like an actual story time to sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we have any other questions there. So people can find you at ryan.com. I'm going to take a guess that your email is probably ryan@ryanz.com. All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us. And thanks for all the people that watched. And we'll see you again soon for another takeover. So thanks, Ryan, for taking the time out of your morning. I know it's early there.
No worries. Thanks. It was great being here. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.